Good morning, everybody. Today is going to be a fun day. We are going to be practicing how to draw a nose. So last week we kind of discussed, nose or ears, nose or ears. I just decided we're going to do noses today. So it's going to be simple supplies. We're just going to need some kind of paper. That can be your sketch pad, or I'm using copy paper for basically everything that I've been doing. Copy paper, you're going to need a mechanical pencil. I prefer a mechanical pencil, but if you have just a regular drawing pencil, that's fine. I am utilizing my pencil eraser, which I love. If you don't have it, just grab a regular heftier eraser. It's just good things to have in your kit of drawing supplies. I'm using a blending stump today, and I'm actually trying to look through my container of drawing supplies. If you don't have a blending stump, I guess I don't know where my cotton swab went. I've been using a cotton swab. Oh, there it is. A cotton swab is a good dupe if you don't have this. So if you don't have this, a cotton swab works fantastic. I did all of my first videos with just a cotton swab, so it is definitely doable, but I will be using this today. And then I just have a pencil sharpener sitting around in case I was using a regular pencil, but I'm not. Oh, I do use it for this guy, so that's around. All right. So that's all the supplies you'll need, and then we'll start working on the noses. Now, before we get too far down the road, I just wanted to say that noses are different. So this is just one of the noses that we're going to be drawing. What's kind of fun is after this video, I want you to start paying attention to noses a bit more, which I know sounds weird. I think every time I do this in my portrait class, I feel like everyone starts oddly looking around the room and looking at everybody's noses. It's kind of fun. Everyone's noses are a little bit different. There are a few little rules that go with noses, but like I said with the eye video, those rules are very soft rules because they get broken all the time. So these are just some, I don't know, like I said, very small rules to go with the noses, but we'll just talk about it very briefly. So here's the nose that I drew yesterday. And we'll talk about, this is a front-facing nose. So at some point, I do want to have us practice a side profile nose because I actually really love side profile nose. I think they're really delightful to draw. But today we'll be starting with a front-facing nose. And I did draw a little bit up. So this little shading that I did up here, that's where, if you guys remember from the eye video, and I don't think I have my eye next to me, that's where like the eye would be sitting right about here. And that's that little shadow that then goes up into the brow section. That's what this guy is right here. That's what's this right here is called the bridge. So if you were to turn sideways and look in the mirror, well, it's kind of hard to look in the mirror. Maybe take a picture or look at somebody else's. If you turn sideways, that's that little section right there. That's the bridge. And that's that section right here in the drawing is that little area right there. That's the bridge. Now, everybody's bridge is different. Oh my gosh. Some people, so this is why when I have a lot of students begin portraits, I sort of shy away from doing babies just because their facial features are so soft, so mushy, which can be, they're adorable to draw, but they're challenging a lot of times for beginners. So a lot of times when people begin drawing, and I discussed this, I think, in my eye video, everything's harsh when you start out. And it's that practice to make things gentle and to make the lines very soft that is a challenge. And noses are no exception. A lot of people draw really harsh lines when they're drawing noses. And even though when you're facing forward, we know there's a structure there because when you turn sideways, you can see that structure. When you're looking at someone forward, we just instinctually we draw that line because we know that it's there. But it's not a harsh line. It's a very soft shaded line. So we'll be talking about that a little bit because that's what happens when we're drawing a forward facing nose. We have to create that depth, that structure of the nose without drawing a harsh line. And I'll talk a little bit about the little, I don't know, the little things that people do in the beginning that tend to mess up the nose and make it look a little bit more harsh or cartoony. Okay, so let's get our paper out and let's start drawing our little nose. So I want to talk about, yes, sir.
Is it right if we pray first?
Oh, yes, thank you. It's probably a good morning for it too. I'm feeling a little tired and kind of gloomy out. Thank you, Lord, for this day, Father, for this is the day that you have made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. I thank you, Father, for pouring out of your heart, your encouragement, your peace, your joy upon all of our lives today, Father, and all the situations that we're dealing with. Thank you, Father, for us to have this moment to express the creativity that you've put in our hearts, Father, for us to be able to express it better every day, to glorify you in every way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so I'm pushing that aside. So let's talk about first the couple things I was talking about the harshness of the nose that I see a lot of beginners do that it's just too harsh. It looks funny. So if I have this shade here on the side of my nose, and it looks like it could potentially be a little bit harsh, but it's not. So what I see a lot of beginners do when they're drawing their nose is they like straight up legit just draw two straight lines like this, and then they're drawing some shape down there at the bottom like that. And they're not wrong with the structure. It's just drawn way too harshly. So if you tend to draw your noses like this, you got most of it. We just need to sort of fine tune perhaps the drawing ability of drawing this too harshly. So I'm going to get my fresh piece of paper and we'll talk about drawing it. Because like I said, you're not too far off if that's how you've been drawing them. So talking about a little bit of the rules. I have no eyeballs here, so we're just drawing a nose out of thin air, so to speak. But if I had eyes up here, your nostrils, so this is your nostrils here, right, is this. Your nostrils, the outer edge, would line up with the inner corner of your eye. So if I was to draw a line from here to here, would be the inner corner of my eye. So even though I don't have an eye here, that's where it would be if I was to actually draw one. It usually lines up right in here, like that. Okay. And like I said, I don't have a face either. Usually I think the nose is, if I recall correctly, is like 3/4 down in the face, but I don't have any face either. So we're just going to be drawing a nose kind of, I don't know, freehand, I guess. So what I'm going to do is first start with a circle. Now, I hesitate to say this because it's not actually a very clean, exact circle, but maybe it will help you start the shape of the nose. This little section here, so that's kind of that little nubbin, the edge of your nose. This also is so, I don't know, prone to different shapes. I see some people have more pointy noses. Some people have more wide little points. Some people definitely have a round point. Everyone's little, I don't know what you call that, tip of your nose is a different shape. So even though I'm telling you to start with a circle, it is not always a circle in everybody's nose, and everyone's nose does look a little bit different. But I'm gonna start with a circle. So right about in the middle of your paper, I'm gonna have you guys draw a very light circle. And what I've been talking about in all the videos, like all the eye videos, everything draw lightly because we're gonna be erasing lines. And I don't want you guys to draw them too harshly and then have difficulty erasing them. So I made extra lines in my circle, so I'm just getting rid of the ones I don't need. Now this is probably a little more of a complicated nose than I sometimes make my beginners start with. Sometimes when I make my beginners start with, and this is what we're going to build off of our circle. If you look at a nose, and this again, this is just this nose, and this is a straight on nose. If you look at it, I always try to tell people it kind of looks like a mountain, like an upside down mountain. Your little nostril holes, you imagine like that's the bottom of the mountain, and then it comes up to a peak. So it's like upside down mountain. And then it comes back around and has another valley. So it's kind of valley, mountain, valley. So when I have a lot of my beginners do noses, I try to make them think, okay, start with your mountain. And I would actually have them start with the nostrils instead of the circle, and then make your little mountain. Oh, that's a really big nose. Have a little mountain and then come up to your valley again. And that's kind of the shape that's happening here. So go back to my circle. What I'm going to do now, you guys, is I'm actually going to start manipulating my circle. So I'm going to leave the sides of the circle the same, but as I come down towards the bottom, I'm actually going to flatten right here and right here. So I'm flattening the left and I'm flattening the right. So I'm sort of manipulating the shape. And then I'm kind of making it come down to, so I'm going angles, so no more circles at the bottom. It's sort of angle, angle. So you should have now, it's circular at the top, but then it changes to kind of angles here down the bottom, okay? Now let's start adding in my bottom part of the nose. So I think this is called like the nose strip. That's this area here connecting into the nostrils. So I'm actually gonna start, I'm looking to see how far away to make my little nostrils. So come in from your angle, I'm gonna come down, I'm making myself a little mark for where I want my nostril hole to be. And I'm doing that on both sides to try to make it about symmetrical. Then I'm gonna begin making little tiny ovals. Very little. So you kind of have this funky little circle shape and then two sort of half ovals on both sides. Now I'm going to start connecting them and start trying to make them as symmetrical as possible. So they come down and they meet down here. And we're making the nose strip. Okay, so you should have about this portion. And I want you to keep working on this until you get it to be pretty symmetrical. I'm going to connect my half oval shapes into my nose strip. There's got to be a better name for it, but that's all I can remember. Okay, now I'm going to come underneath. So sometimes I'll draw a straight line underneath of my nostrils to make sure that they're the same. Sometimes I have a tendency to change the angle a little bit and they'll tip. So if that's helpful to you to make sure you're getting it in the right place, do that. Okay, I'm happy with that so far. Okay, so now I'm going to start creating the sides of my nostril. So at the bottom of the nostril, when we're looking in the front, it's pretty tiny underneath. So this is that fold under. It's really small. So I'm going to be drawing that right now. I'm sort of making it really light. So this is kind of like, remember when we did our eyes and we did that bottom lash line? We did that bottom lash line really lightly, right? That's what we're kind of doing here. We're doing a really light line. Kind of like that. Now I'm going to start doing a little bit of building of the bottom portion of the nose. So I'm going to come back up to this little circle area where I made my angles, and I'm going to be coming up from this angle and over to create the bottom portion of my nose. Again, I'm trying, if this is truly forward facing, this should be sort of symmetrical. So try to be looking for that as you go along. If one area looks like it's terribly bigger than the other, like I think that one's a little bigger than that one, I might have to figure out what happened. Maybe this is just too low. But try to make them pretty symmetrical. That's your job. And I think I was talking about something else, Evelyn, but I saw your finished eye on colored paper. I'll have to look at that again in a little bit because I think that looked really good. I'm really excited about you finishing the colored eye project. Which if you guys are interested in doing that, we do have that on YouTube, a video where we did colored or toned paper, a lot of people call it, toned paper project. Okay, how are we doing, everybody? Nothing egregiously bad happening? Everyone's okay? You can even just give me a thumbs up so I know everyone's okay.
Miss Anna,
Yes.
looks like Malai is with us.
Hi, Malai. Glad to have you with us. Okay, so since nobody said anything bad's happening, we're going to continue up with my nose. So I've created this circle shape, which I actually think my circle might be a smidgen big. I might just work on shrinking that at some point because it looks a little large. My nose is going to be ginormous. But we're going to start building up the structure on the sides of the nose. So we're going to come up this way. So if I've created this, I've created the front sort of face of my nose. So I've just created this area here. Okay, that's what we are. Now we have to create the sides of the nostrils and this whole area here.
Miss Anna?
Yeah.
So Malai has her hand raised. I don't know. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what's up?
We're just gonna have to.
Oh, no, I don't have a question. Never mind.
Okay, you're okay? All right.
Got it coming.
Do you have a question? No?
Okay.
Hey, Macy says somewhere in the future she'd like to know how to draw animal noses like cats and dogs.
I think that is a fantastic idea, Macy. I actually have been, it's not been at the top of my list working on, but I have drawn one animal eye. I'll have to see if I can find it before we leave today. It was really shiny. I had to build up so much graphite on the paper that it's a little shiny. So I'll see if it shows up on the camera. But I did work on one, Macy. So hopefully we will get a chance to work on more as we go along. All right, so what I've been working on is creating the sides of my nostrils, everybody. So create your little nostrils, which I said, I think my circle's too big. So I'm gonna, my nostrils, the top of my nostrils should really be at that peak of the circle. And that's why my nostrils are gonna be ginormous. So I just chopped in my circle a little bit because I think my nose is gonna be huge. I always seem to do this bigger when I demo it for you guys the second time. I don't know what that's all about. I did that yesterday with my cherries. My cherries were like, I don't know, half again as big the second time than they were the first time I did them. Okay, so from this little circle shape, we're gonna start coming up. So I'm gonna come up. It sort of has an interesting shape here. Let's talk about it real quick. So again, everyone's nose is very different, but as a whole, it kind of does a little in and out. So it kind of goes out, in, out. So here's my bridge. This is my bridge right here. So it kind of goes out right in the middle and then back in. Let's see if I can get I always get curves weird. So it's kind of, it's right here in the middle is where it kind of is going to go out and then back in. Let me see, I'll over exaggerate so it'll show up better. Here we go. Over exaggerating. It's usually a little bit wider right here in the middle, and then it comes back in a little bit right before we hit our nose. So I'm going to not make a straight line. I'm actually going to make a line that does do a little bit of curve, but it's very subtle. So let's see if I can actually make my curve subtle. Okay, so everyone should be approximately at this point in your drawing. I'm also going to start laying out the additional structure. So with our nose, you have, so it does come out a little bit, right? It kind of very gently slopes into those cheeks. So when you look at a reference photo, let's take a look here. So here's my nose, my really crudely drawn nose now. Here's my nose. See if I can do it really fast. Here it is. My nose. Okay, here's my nose. Here's the top. There's also the side now. So there's all this side shadow here. There's this kind of structure that goes down into right where the nostril is. Usually right on the outer edge of the nostril is this shadow. So there's shadow on this side and shadow on this side. So let's look at our nose again. So what I'm going to do, so here's my little, I don't know, eyebrow area. I'm going to just draw a very light line to show where this shadow is going to go. Again, I'm really light, really light. Okay, so now I've just got 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 sections going across my nose. Probably the last bit of shaping drawing we're going to do is at the bottom of the nose. So at the bottom of the nose, obviously this is all light based, okay? Depending on where your light source is coming from, you're going to get more or less shadow underneath your nose, but we're going to be drawing a little bit. So there is usually Again, depending where your light's coming from. There can be this nice little, I don't know, what does it usually look like? Kind of like a curved triangle of shadow that kind of comes down here underneath your nose. So what I'm going to draw now is underneath my nose, attaching right to the outer sections of my nostril. I am going to draw a little bit of shadow right down here. Okay, kind of like that. And I'm going to tweak all of this, you guys. So none of this is set in stone. This is just me starting out my drawing, and now comes the tweaking and fixing of our drawing. So you guys should all have about this going on. So everyone got that? If no one says anything, I'm just going to keep going. Okay. So let's start shading. Now I still think that my nose might be a little bit wide, but I'm going to probably keep going on with it and see if I can just work on it with shading. So I'm going to start with the base. This is down here. This is going to have shadow in it. So unless you had light coming from like the bottom of your face, this is going to have shadow on it. So what I'm very gently going to do with my pencil right now is I'm going to hold it further back. And I talked about this in a lot of my eye videos. If you guys are trying to shade, well, I'll back up a little bit more. All the videos so far, I've been using an HB pencil. And I'm doing that because basically everyone's going to have HB laying around in their house. If you have artist pencils, go for, practicing using your artist pencils. But you can achieve all the shading that I've done with all of the eyes and the nose, all the drawing videos I've been doing, I've only been using HB. So you can do all of these things with just an HB pencil. You don't have to be limited to only using artist pencils. Artist pencils do come in different hard and softnesses. So it's an incredible tool. Like when I'm starting to do more realistic drawings, I do use my artist pencils, and they're very helpful. It's a tool. But if you don't have access to that, and frankly, I think I talked about it in the earlier videos, I sort of view it like a calculator. Practice shading with just an HB. I think it's a really important because you have to practice your control of your pencil and the pressure. And I just think that's such a benefit to your progress as an artist that I would say just use an HB. I only use an HB for years. But if you want to, you always can use an artist pencil. But so that goes back to why I was saying holding it in different places does help. If you're holding your pencil further back towards the edge, it's harder to push hard. So it's helpful to do very light things when you're holding it further back. So anytime you're shading light, which we are in this whole first few layers, hold it back here, okay? Which I think you can't see when I'm off camera. So I'm gonna come in down here and I'm gonna shade this whole base nose area with a very light layer of pencil. That was the long explanation for why to shade down here. Okay, one. All right, next is we're going to shade the shadow on the bottom. So that's this thing down here. So if you're pretty happy with the shade, which actually I'm not, I'm going to shape this a little bit. I think I'm going to come in a bit more. If you're pretty happy with the shape, then go in with your pencil and again, take a light layer on the base here. Okay, just trying to get through all the different layers of shading to do. Now for the nose. My nose, because this is all white, it makes the little nubbin of the nose look enormous. I'm going to start chopping away at that by adding a pencil. So I'm going to come in on the sides and the bottom, and I'm going to add a very light layer of pencil coming in. We're going to make that white smaller because it's way too big. There does need to be a little bit of highlight on that nubbin of the nose, just so there's a highlight. I'm going to take a little light layer across the whole right nostril. And on the left nostril, I'm going to take it on the sides, but I'm going to leave the middle. So don't put any shadow in the middle. We're going to imagine that our light is coming from over here. So this is my light. Now for the sides of the nose. So I'm trying to get through all the light layers. I'm going to come through on the side of the nose and begin adding in my shade. It probably doesn't matter, but I always change the direction. I go this way for this side, and I go this way for this side when I'm putting my pencil marks in. So I actually change the direction. So if you need to move your paper around in order to get a better angle, which this is a weird angle for me. I don't normally do it like this. Oh, fun fact about noses. They are shorter when you are younger and they are longer when you're older. So when I have a lot of students drawing portraits and we're drawing that nose, we can have a beautiful face, but if you extend that nose a little bit, they are instantly older. So that's one of the other challenges with drawing young people and babies, is that if you change that length of the nose and everything else is the same, first of all, they will look a little weird if their nose is a little bit bigger to their face. But anyway, they get older. So I've had kids drawing a person and they're like, why does this person look like they're 20 instead of looking like they're 10? Well, not all of it, but a lot of it can be this guy. If you make him a little longer, you're going to get older. Okay, now, right where this little, I'm going to imagine it's a V, okay, a very gentle V, but there's a V here, right, where the eyebrow is, kind of area. So right where that comes in, I'm going to draw a line. That's my bridge. My bridge might be a little high. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it right here, because I made my nose kind of big. So everything above this line, I'm going to give it a little light layer. Okay, so we have a wonderful base layer of pencil. Now I'm just going to begin filling in and shading darker. So I'm going to come back down to the bottom and work on my nostril area, and then I'll probably just keep working up. So I'm going to come down in here and see if I like what I've done shape-wise. And I'm going to start filling in the nostril. So I always start deeper at the top. And then even though it is dark, I push lighter towards the bottom. So I don't know if it's showing up on camera well enough, but it's much deeper at the top than it is the bottom. I always do that just because it has a tendency to just look like a giant black hole in your nose, which is super not pretty. So I always be careful with that. You can always make it darker if you need to, but I always start erring on the side of not very dark. I'm gonna do the same thing to this side. I think I made this shape weird. I'm gonna pull that down. I love noses. I know this is gonna sound really weird. I wish I remember what the name of the actor is, but there's this one actor. Every time I see him, his nose looks crooked. Like it looks like, so this line here that's usually pretty straight on people, like his nose like goes at an angle. It's very interesting to see his nose. Like when you're looking straight on, there is totally like a break in it. It kind of goes bloop, bloop. And every time I see his nose, I don't know, I love his nose. I think it looks really cool. I don't know if he feels that way, but I like that people's faces are different. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I find it really fun. If everyone looked the same, maybe it's just from an artistic standpoint, and maybe that's how God feels. You guys would kind of be boring if we're all the same. I like seeing everyone's face look different, and there's interesting things about your face and your nose and your eyes, and then it's fun seeing. Sometimes when I've seen some of my students and I end up seeing the parents eventually, it's really fun to see, oh, you have your mom's eyes, and oh, you have your dad's nose. That's kind of fun. I don't know if it's just me or other people notice that too, but I really enjoy that. Okay, so I'm adding in some more shadow underneath here. Now, something to note about the nostrils. So there is usually a highlight in here somewhere, either usually on the top of the nostril and sometimes the bottom of the nostril. I'm going to do a little bit of both. So I've talked about this a little bit with all my students. It sometimes sounds, I don't know, sometimes sounds dumb. You can have highlights in a shadow. So this is shaded, right? It's not white. But even within that, there can be a shadow that's not white. It's just sort of gray toned. There's going to be a highlight right above this nostril and down here as well. And you see that kind of in my picture here. Do you see I have a highlight here and it runs down the nose dip? And then I have a highlight here and here. That's what you're going to be doing. So I'm filling in my shadow, and I want you to know what I'm doing is I'm actually going around it because I've already laid the base. So these tones are all in here already. Now I'm going around them and I'm creating the shadow around the highlight so that it really stands out. So that's what I'm starting to do now is I'm going in and I'm adding in the shadow. I'm kind of going over that circle shape that I've drawn, and I'm starting to get rid of it, and I am coming in with my shadow because we need to make that circle look smaller. And I'm bringing some shadow down this way. Go different directions with your pencil. It really helps the texture. So sometimes I go at an angle to the right. Sometimes I go to the angle to the left. Like I said, I have to get rid of my line because my line is still showing up. Now, the right nostril area I've determined is the darker side. And usually, like I said, unless you're completely straight on with your light, one side of the nose and nostril will be darker, which in this picture is the right. So even in my light, it should be darker than this side.
I have hazel. Macy says I have hazel eyes, but people think I have brown eyes. Sometimes they're green, other times they're green. Oh, and sometimes they have a hint of blue. I like my eyes.
Me too, Macy. I'm a hazel girl, so I hear you. A lot of times when people look at my eyes, they look kind of golden, I would say most of the time. But then sometimes if I'm wearing green, which I've worn green a few times here recently, they'll see a little hint of green in my eyes. I agree. I'm a fan of the hazel, but that's because I'm hazel-eyed. I keep telling people my sister has cool eyes. She has like one blue and then one kind of goldeny hazel eye. My dad has the blue eyes in the family. My mom has the brown. And I think, I don't know, I should now look at my other siblings. I don't know. She's the only one with blue eyes in the family besides my dad. Everyone else just has, I think, brown or hazel. I have to now go look.
Oh, people are weighing in, telling us what their eye colors are now. Your sister has two different colored eyes?
She does. So my mom talked about how when she was born, I want to say that her eyes were both blue. And then at some point her eye started changing color, but it never finished. So one is sort of, like I said, it kind of changed more goldeny hazel. So it's trippy. I love looking at her eyes because you look at them and one is blue and one is totally not. It's like a different color.
Huh.
I know, right? Fascinating, I think.
Everybody in my family has blue eyes.
Blue eyes? Yep.
That's unusual.
I love it. My little nephew, his mom and dad, neither one of them have blue eyes, and yet he's got blue eyes. So there's two children in that family, and he's got blue eyes, and I just think I love how that works. Like, you know, mom and dad don't have blue eyes, but then all of a sudden you get this kid with blue eyes. I find it fascinating.
Okay, I got a question for you, Anna.
Yep.
Is my question. So that line that you drew for the nose, the round part, right?
This thing?
Yeah, the initial one you drew.
Mhm.
Are you, when you're shading, are you just making the shading the same color so that it kind of disappears? I mean, the same contrast so that it disappears, or are you blending it a little bit with the other lead? I'm not sure what's happening there, but it's kind of cool that it just kind of
I think the best way to answer that is I am softening it. So I drew it really, really lightly, so it was really easy to cover up. So maybe that answers your question. But I'm just sort of going over it more and more each time I do it, and just sort of getting rid of that circular shape. Maybe, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
yeah.
How's everybody doing with their noses? The fact that it's silent, I will take it as a good sign that you guys are just working away.
Olivia says she has green eyes also.
Ooh.
I didn't know Olivia was with us, but we have quite a few people watching that. I don't know who they are, so.
Oh, cool.
I have an
I
audience.
think I know. Hi, Olivia. Green eyes. I think green eyes are really cool. I feel like green eyes are kind of like green and violet. You guys are like the unicorns of the eyes. So I always read that Elizabeth Taylor had purple or, violet eyes, which I thought was kind of cool. And then you always wonder if that's really real, because how many people have you met with violet eyes in your life? And then I had one student. She came in and she had violet eyes, and I was so stoked. I know it seems like I always try not to stare at people because then I might give them, creep them out or something. But I just was so impressed. There's actually violet eyes, you guys. I think it's super rare, but it's beautiful. Violet eyes are really interesting.
I've never seen something like.
Yeah, they are striking. Once you've seen violet eyes, I mean, it's kind of cool. So with the shadows on the side of the nose, so this is this guy, adding the structure and the depth. This side ultimately will need to be darker than this side. So I've been just right now working on the bridge and the whole nose area on both the sides right now, and I'm working on shrinking the shape. So when I drew the shape, it looks kind of wide, and when I start shading it, it kind of starts inching in and looking a little bit smaller, which is kind of my goal. But this side needs to be darker than this side. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Slow, build slow, you guys. And ultimately, I think you saw me do it over here. I've done shading both ways. Like I've been shading back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. But whatever my last layer is, I keep it going either this way or this way for this side, just so it helps that, I don't know, the directional look of the shading. So bear that in mind as you're shading the sides there too. I want your last layer, so the one that looks the most noticeable, I want that one to be going a different direction. Now I want you to see my side here. I'm kind of building a little bit all over the place. As I'm building this, I'm coming into this area, and this is too wide. I think ultimately I'm gonna be shading in all the way to there. I don't know if that shows up on camera, but I will be pulling that over. So I'm working to shrink the white space, because your nose kind of looks gargantuan right now when it's drawn like this, and I need to be making it a bit smaller. I think everyone needs to go into looking in a mirror after this, and we're looking to see why we're shading places that we're shading. This is a very top of your nostril, and it's usually a little bit more shading right up in here. And that's why I'm trying to build it. But if I just build it by itself and I don't build down here, it looks kind of weird. So that's why I start moving my pencil down, because I'm just trying to spread out the love, make the shape not appear so alone. And we have not touched our blending stump. And you'll notice that, see, there's a lot you can do without ever touching your blending stump. But I will be, I think, grabbing that here real soon, blending and then continuing on. I'm gonna come out with my shape now a little bit. Last time I kept it really tucked into the nostril, but now I'm just sort of gently dragging it outside of the nostril line. Just a little bit, not a lot. Any of my pen and ink students might see that I actually am utilizing a little bit of cross hatching. I'm leaving this one a little more on the sketchy side, all things considered, with my nose drawing. So I am utilizing a little bit of cross hatching, and you guys can do that with your sketches. So sometimes I actually don't mind lines being visible. There's always a time and a place, and depending on your technique that you're utilizing. I think my nostrils are a little massive. I think this one's bigger than the other one. Oh, well. All right, so let's come down to the bottom of the nose really quick, and then I'm going to do a little more shading on the bottom, and then we're going to start using a blending stump. So underneath your nose, and I think this whole area is called the Cupid's bow. So when you're looking in the mirror, which I think is always good to do after we're done here, just to study the face, it's this little shape right underneath here. So it goes directly under the nose strip. So it goes right underneath it, kind of like where the, I guess, the further out edges. You're gonna go directly underneath of it, and it gently comes in and then out. And I'm gonna draw that shape underneath my nose right now. So it's kind of like giving it a little waist. Right about there. And now I'm gonna come in and begin adding in, I'm gonna go underneath of these little baby nostril shapes down here. I'm gonna go underneath, and I'm going to start adding in more shadow so that those really stand out. I have to make that little nose strip stand out, so I'm adding a little more shadow. I'm gonna make this side darker than this side. Okay. Okay, I think this is in a really good place. So I'm going to stop with my pencil for a moment and I'm going to start working with my blending stump. Now this is the time, I don't know if you guys have clean cotton swab or if it's dirty, or in my case, I'm using a blending stump and it already has like a lot of pencil on it. I don't know if you guys can see it. So here's what you're going to do. Sometimes, and I don't have mine near me, I think it's like somewhere else. Sometimes blending stumps come with it's almost like a piece of sandpaper. And I know some of my students, some of my artists have been using one. I've seen you guys bring it to class. So what you guys do with that's meant for this. So you rub it on there and it takes off the extra graphite that has collected on your blending stump. Now my cotton swab's clean, so if I went to go use this, I wouldn't have to do that. But this guy, that's what you're supposed to do eventually is take that off. Because if I took this into a light area, it actually still has quite a bit of graphite on it. You see how I could shade a picture just with that. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually rub it on a scrap piece of paper if I don't have that sandpaper until it just gets a lot of it off. Oh gosh. Just until it gets pretty light. And once it gets pretty light, then it's ready to use. The sandpaper is best, but if you don't have it and your dad doesn't have a piece of sandpaper, this will work. Now I'll recap about, we talked about it in the eye videos. You can use pressure control with your blending stump. And that's what I'm doing here. I am barely touching, you guys. I am like floating over because you can grind it in there and look how dark it gets, very dark. I am like barely touching. So you wanna make sure you're barely touching. And I rarely do the entire picture, you guys, be careful. What I see a lot of my students do is either A, just push way too hard, and or they blend the whole thing until it's just sort of a blended sort of mess. So I like some pencil strokes showing. Now, if you're doing a really realistic drawing, you probably would blend a little bit more, but even then they're careful because it can look just dirty, which is what it ends up looking like if you blend too much. So I'm just softening some of the lines that are in the lighter areas. And I'm making that highlight running through the middle really narrow, so there's only very little bit of light showing up. I'm not even sure if I used my blending stump very much for the last one. I think I finished it just with pencil only. Because I kind of like the texture of the pencil, but especially for this. Okay, that's about all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna grab my pencil again. I'm just gonna add some more actual pencil lines running through the face because face, nose, whatever this is. Because I like the texture. So I'm just grabbing some, it's almost like hatching right now. So if you guys did pen and ink, which will happen later too, I'm just doing a little bit of hatching through here just to add some texture because this, I view this as sort of my sketch nose. So I don't mind if it has some lines showing. Giving this structure to the nose right now so it doesn't appear flat. That's why I'm going sideways and sideways with my lines. I am deliberately putting lines on here. If you don't want the lines and you just want it to be smooth, you can nix this part, but I want my lines, so I'm putting it in. I do want this bottom, so is this, remember that in the very beginning when we drew this sort of bottom line area and we shaded down here first? What I'm doing now is I'm trying to sort of reestablish that shadow running right through here so that it appears a bit stronger. Right now it's not. So I'm taking my lines and I'm trying to subtly, but yet firmly reestablish that line. How are we doing on time? I have no idea what time it is.
It is 10:53.
Excellent, excellent. I always think these are gonna take not very long, and then I always use up all the time. So I'm gonna pause here for a minute, and I would like to see what you guys are doing, just so I can see if there's anything I can assist you with before we're done, because I'm about done. I'm just sort of, you know, tweaking things, but I could be tweaking things for a long time. So if anyone's ready or willing to show me what you're doing, I would gladly take a look. Because you guys have been pretty quiet, so I assume that you're just working away. Is anybody willing or ready to show?
Let's see if we can
Looks like they're still working on them.
Facebooking.
See, even from this nose to my first nose, they do not look the same. I don't know. I think I like my first nose better, but they're a little different. You guys see that? Maybe it's just because I've been shading longer, but this one looks different. And I think I like my shape of my nostril better on the other one. I think I'm gonna chop my nostril off.
Well, Olivia is asking, how would she send a picture? She's watching on Facebook Live, and something I discovered yesterday is you can post a picture in the comments of Facebook Live after the live concludes. But while the Facebook Live is going on, it won't let you comment with a photo. So let's see. You could email a picture to me. The email address is actually on the Facebook page, but I can try to give it to you. It's info, I-N-F-O, short for information, info at New Creations, with an S, christianacademy.org. I know that's not easy, but we could try that. We need a better solution so we can see pictures from Facebook Live. But anyway, it's info at New Creations christianacademy.org, and then I could make sure Ms. Anna could try to see it. But that's hard when they're watching Facebook Live. They're not inside of the Zoom call. Harder to share pictures back and forth. We'll have to talk about that and find a good solution.
But I would love to see your nose. So if you're able to email it, hon, that'd be fun to see. And I think, you know, I've been trying to figure out what we should work on, you know, I don't know, with our whole faces and what's next. And even though we just did one nose today, I think we should work on a side profile nose maybe next time, or at least at some point, because I do think it's fun to work on different angles of the nose. I like side profile noses personally. Well, I'm just gonna keep fiddling here, but I'm really kind of done. So has anyone gotten a good place for me to see? Because I would love to see it. Did Gianna get a chance to work on drawing with us today, Miss Gia?
Yeah, she started. I think she has concluded and is going for breakfast now.
Oh, so she didn't even show me.
She was watching on Facebook Live.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Olivia says she's going to try to email and I'll look for that. But she also says she would like to know how to draw hands.
Ooh, okay. I think that would be a fun thing to do. We may, maybe one of the drawing classes, Olivia, we will work on first blind contours of hands, which I think is an excellent first step in getting more comfortable with drawing hands. That'd probably be a place to start, I think. Oh, there's a picture that's loaded into the chats. What's that?
I think that was the reference she attached.
Okay.
Malai says she would like to learn how to draw hands as well.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. They're hard. They're fun. They're hard. Those tend to look like sausages without practice. There's a reason why you guys sometimes look at, I should look up some paintings of good examples of it. Some artists, they always do these like very graceful things with their models' hands because it's just more fun to draw. A limp or a flat sort of flipper hand is not that fun to draw and not that fun to look at either. So a lot of artists would do, I always think they're very funny positions because they're always very, very graceful, like a ballerina actually, which I always think they always do very beautiful movements with their hands. They're fun to look at and they're more fun to draw, I think. So it's always a good thing to know if you're ever looking through art books, look at what the hands are doing, because I always think that's a very interesting thing to see what artists do with the hands. Okay, well, I'm done. So I'm just gonna, I'm ready to see what you guys are doing because
We can sign off on Facebook if you want.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well,
can
you
post
guys,
it.
I had fun drawing with you on Facebook today. Post your pictures. We will always comment and take a look at whatever you guys post on there. So post your pictures. I would love to see what you did. And thank you for joining us. And later today at 2:30, I'll be doing pen and ink. And the worksheet for the pen and ink, I think is it on Facebook, Miss Gia?
I emailed it to everybody
Yeah.
on our mailing list. So if you didn't get it, please send me a note through Facebook or whatever, and I'll make sure you get it also. But it should be in your email box.
Okay, so there you go. So print it out and be ready at 2:30 and get your favorite pen and we'll start working on some pen and ink projects. So thank you for joining me, guys. Bye.